personal power, people positive, the community of connection. This is the Bob Jeswald Show.
Okay, Dr. Tanya Snyder, on our, who's on our sleeves, so to speak. You are a contributor and pediatric psychologist at Nationwide Children's, and cannot really talk too much about we're never going to talk about anybody personal, but there's a new national survey that commissioned by the On Your Sleeves movement for children's mental health finds staggering statistics. 50% of parents of children younger than 18 feel their children's mental health has suffered during the past 12 months. Social media use, I got to say it, my kids do it, I tell them all the time, what you see is not reality. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think with social media, that's a really common and important question these days. And just like other activities, social media has its risk and it has its benefits, for sure. But it can be challenging, and we encourage a lot of conversations and education with our children, with our adolescents about social media use, because we know it's a prime place where marketers are targeting youth, are targeting children, targeting adults, to be honest with you. And it can be hard to kind of tell the difference between what's an ad, what's being kind of influenced here, and what is kind of maybe that more kind of typical post that we're seeing from like our friends and from our family members.
Tanya, you can't police the kids. Let's face it. You got to give them their little freedom. I know our school district here years ago announced we're going to allow phones in the classroom. We must do it because it's a reality. We can't fight it, but we can't necessarily be over them. So how do we honestly police it? Because curiosity is going to be there. Get on TikTok. You can't use TikTok. If you're going to use it in this proper way. But how do we do in their own social circles? How do we make them tell them, hey, do this, these platforms, this is the right way of doing it? But they're still going to have one child out there that's going to go a little bit deeper, and the things that they can show of themselves or see others. Is there any way with this, at least a little bit of on your sleeves, encouraging our parents to give them the right tools in the toolbox, so to speak, to tell them, do this so they're not killing themselves?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what On Our Sleeves is all about. We're trying to get resources out, not only to caregivers, but to other adults who may interact with kids kind of frequently, teachers, as well as pediatricians and other primary care and healthcare providers. We want to give them these free resources that are developed by experts, so that we can say, you can feel good about using this and kind of implementing this. And one of the things that we know is it's really important just to have conversations with kids about social media use, because you're right, we can't really police it. We might not be able to stop it completely, but we want to be engaged. And we do, as caregivers, we want to be curious about it, really, rather than judgmental, and maybe even try and pay attention to our own initial reactions and emotions about social media, or even our own social media use, so that we can be good role models for our kids as well. And really just starts by having those conversations, kind of being curious and asking those open-ended questions about, like, who is your favorite influencer? Who is your favorite content creator? What are you watching right now? And can you explain this to me?
So when do we start, though? I mean, we think about it, like some parents say, my kid's not going to touch social media, but being real, what's the appropriate age to kick it in gear, so to speak?
And I think these conversations can start really early. I mean, I think even we know we want to begin having conversations about mental health, even as young as in those toddler years, to just kind of set that baseline, that foundation for what are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are those emotions? And yes, our 3-year-olds are hopefully not kind of consuming a lot of social media, but it helps set the stage, and then helps kind of allow us to have these conversations down the road as our kids age about other things that might be coming up and kind of part of their daily life. And I think certainly, even in terms of like elementary school age children might have exposure to social media, particularly YouTube. Yeah. And so I think it's important to have those conversations really early on, probably earlier than you would expect.
So it is kind of like over communicating. I always say it to my kids too. I got the minor, they're in their late teens. I mean, we're talking a senior in high school, my 2 youngest ones. I have an older daughter. I got grandkids now, and they're on the social media. And I tell my older daughter, I'm like, be careful what you do. Be careful what you do. Do not let them, I'm telling you, Brittany, in the stuff that I'm seeing them do, and I'll give you this for an example. I do this all the time. What is up with I call it the tongue, the constant, You ever see the tongue thing? What is the tongue thing? Axel, do you know what the tongue thing is? What is the tongue thing? Do you know? It's just
no, I do not know the answer to that. But I think your kids are the experts, right? They probably know, and so that's I think we go to the experts. We want to ask them, what is up with this tongue thing? And you know, again, being curious rather than judgmental, like, what's that all about? Or how do you feel when you see this? And is this something that you're doing and you're posting about? And just kind of being engaged with them, I think, is really important. And maybe, you know, sharing the experience of social media together so that you can be watching things together alongside with your child, especially younger children, so that we can kind of be able to kind of help kind of direct the conversations and maybe help direct social media use a little bit and help point out when things might not be appropriate, or maybe we don't want to share that, or might be more targeted towards like influencing you or marketing or sponsored activities or sponsored social media posts.
So as a pediatric psychologist, and we trying to get into that a little bit, to tell our kids too, when they see that young lady and they're young kids, and they're already kind of revealing a little bit more. And I mean, just physically in that moment, in that one little moment or space, whoever it is, or the one who's got the 20 million followers by chance. I have a former colleague who happened to hit the algorithm just right, ended up with 25 million. However, she's 23 years old. But young teenagers and young kids look up to that. I want that too. They have to have that information. What is it with the acceptance of this false notion that their life is picture perfect? Because it does kind of present that. It's scary in a way, and it's almost an addiction. Is it true to say that, is it an addiction in a sense that they have to have that too? I got to have those millions of followers.
I mean, I think it is an addiction. We know that social media, it can be really addicting to continue to just keep scrolling and to continue to see these kind of rewarding, stimulating things that are popping up and kind of getting your attention. And you mentioned it, like, she hit the algorithm just right. And that's what we know social media uses, right? They use these algorithms. They're able to see what we stop on, even if it's just briefly, what time of day we're looking at this, how long we're watching a certain video that has some specific content in it. And so then you just keep getting more and more of that content. And so it can become like an addiction, and it can become something that we kind of we're overusing, and we kind of just can't figure out how to like stop ourselves. It can be hard to stop that cycle and stop that scroll.
That's the scroll. I love what you just said, the scroll. You know who does it and who's guilty of it? My wife would shoot me now. But I'll wake up in the morning on a Saturday morning, and I'm asleep. She's up earlier. She'll be laying in her bed, and I can hear the vibration, her finger going boom, 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 voyeuring through my other Facebook page that she doesn't even have her name on it, but mine is, hey, did you know so-and-so did this? So it is, and I want to go about adults. We're talking about kids primarily here. But it could be, look, our generation got it late, but our kids, this is all they know. By the time they get our age and older, and of course I'm older, but how damaging is this going to be down the line? What do you forecast to see? Or could there be some rewards with this? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably too soon to tell. I don't think we have a lot of that good research, a lot of that data to know what's going to happen down the road or in 5-10 years, and how social media really is going to impact kind of long-term, longitudinally. But we are hoping that we can kind of get some of that information and provide some of this research and study this a little bit more to obtain some of that data, so that we might have more recommendations or more ideas about what we can do differently, or how we can kind of consume social media in a way that's responsible, in a way that's appropriate. I mean, we definitely know that there can be harm from social media use, particularly overuse of social media and kind of engaging in social media only and not engaging in real life social activities. And that overemphasis on looks that we often see in social media can definitely be harmful for some children. But there are definitely some benefits. You know, it can strengthen those relationships that kids have in real life, and really help strengthen those real life social relationships. It can also help increase a sense of community, and sometimes help normalize or destigmatize certain conditions or certain concerns. It can certainly help destigmatize mental health, which is another mission of On Our Sleeves. You know, it can help normalize and kind of destigmatize some of these physical and mental health concerns, and can be a place that provides support and affirmation, but it needs to be used responsibly.
And you just hit the nail on the head. when do we put it away? I mean, before you go to bed, you always hear the thing, electronic devices make your brain waves go wacky. Is that true? Or when do we shut it off? Parents, do they need to say, I mean, there's got to be hard, fast rule, 2 hours a day, 1 hour a day. How much is too much? And when do we put it away?
Yeah. I think, what we know for sure is that it can impact sleep. And so the recommendation typically is to discontinue all social media, really all screen use about an hour before bedtime.
Sure.
And that can be challenging for kids as well as for adults. And we certainly want to be good role models when we're thinking about our own social media.
I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Kind of put our social media away at 9 o'clock if we're trying to go to bed at 10 o'clock too. And we also know that, it's hard to say if there's hard and fast rules. We have some recommendations about 2 hours of screen time a day for most youth and for most adults. But certain kids, that might be too much. And so I think it's really taking a look at, and as the caregiver, you're probably the expert on your child. And so kind of thinking about other ways that they're showing that they're responsible and showing that they can maybe handle some of the things that might confront them on social media and taking that into account. And certainly making a social media family plan. There's a resource on honoursleeps.org about creating this social media plan, which is kind of like a contract for family members, all family members in the home, not just the kids, but the parents, the cousins, the grandparents, everyone's included in this, about how to use social media responsibly and kind of the limits and boundaries about social media use.
I like that. I mean, that makes sense. And that kind of makes me think too, of course, on your sleeves is a way, if folks are listening right now and they're probably thinking, okay, Bob, Dr. Snyder, you guys keep talking about this, but you guys provide some great free and easy to follow kind of guidelines like you're talking about now. I think a lot of people need to find those. I think it's a great way to start. I mean, if you're kind of confused and just don't know where to go, that may be a way to go. I mean, that's some of the stuff that you cover through the guides.
Yep. Absolutely. I think that's a great place to start if you're thinking about, I just don't know how to get started, even if it's about things unrelated to social media. Maybe this is just about starting conversations. There's lots of conversation starters that we have available for free. There's ways to kind of help regulate emotions when our emotions get really big and maybe they're starting to take control and we want to kind of take back some of that control. So it really is a good starting point and can give caregivers, can give parents some information about, how do I start this conversation or what might my next steps be?
I like that. And those steps could be quite critical. I mean, if you start today, you can make a difference in the long run down the road. It's not all bad. I mean, it is rewarding, like you said. I think, is there the romance, or should I say the innocence of eye contact being lost through this, though? Don't you find that to be, and I don't know if you have interns or anything in your practice or whatever it may be, but I'm finding these kids, when you go to the schools and you're talking to me, you want to say, hey, kid, look at me when I'm talking to you. That's what my family would say to me. Are we losing that, Dr. Snyder? Is that important? I mean, we still got to have that?
I mean, I think it's definitely important. We still need to have social skills, right? We still need to be able to demonstrate social skills in the real world, like in real life. Not everything is going to happen over a phone or over a screen or over social media. And so we definitely need to be continuing to think about these social skills and how we're kind of continuing to engage in real life social activities so that it's not solely limited to screens or social media. I think those are important and maybe things that we're starting to kind of lose sight of, in particular, given, with some of the changes and some of the challenges that occurred during COVID. A lot of things switched to online and a lot of things switched to Zoom and to computers. And so we're starting to kind of come out of that period of time and kind of get back more into these real world, real life social activities, and learning how to engage and continuing to engage in those social activities is really important.
And on a flip of this, though, I think back to some of these kids, I go back to my grandkids. I use them as an example. They're almost like, I don't want to say too sharp is a bad thing, but they kind of, they know what you're talking about. I mean, they're really in tune to what you're saying now because they're being educated at a faster rate. Good and bad. I mean, I could see some good things out of that. I mean, some that are a reader, they may engage into some really good, fun content on social media, while others may be getting something that may be a little bit too risque. And I may catch that occasionally with my one granddaughter. She's 2. I go, no, come on a minute, Zoe. You did not just, well, I'm just telling you, Grandpa Bob, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, whoa, how do you, And it may be uncomfortable in the sense knowing the fact that how do they know this already, or how do they read between the lines on some things that are to us, you would seem like that you're not supposed to know that until you're past your developmental, for third grade years, once you're proficient in reading, let's just say, and
Right.
and they're getting this stuff way beforehand. So COVID, you hit something on COVID. So it makes me always ask you this, and we may not know the answer. Of course, I know research has to come years later. But what do you think COVID did to our kids? I mean, social media was still there for them, but at the same time, they lost that bit of learning. There's still a core kids that just, and it could be from a socioeconomic level. I don't know, from a, you know, from your point of view, is it's like, just from a pediatric side, what do you see
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
age? Where did the harm go wrong, or maybe it didn't?
Well, I think you're right. There are multiple factors that are kind of impacting kind of this mental health crisis in youth that we're really in right now and they're experiencing right now. But to be honest, I think it was there before COVID. I think COVID just exacerbated and kind of brought a lot of things to light and brought a lot of things into our awareness that were maybe there before, but maybe not to the same
Okay.
extent, or that we weren't seeing quite as often. And so it's hard to pinpoint one thing in particular that's the cause for anything or the reason why something is happening. But I think all of the changes that happened in the midst of COVID, the transition to online school, maybe no school for a period of time, learning was done very differently. And for some kids, maybe that was really helpful and they learned well in that online school setting. But for some kids, it probably wasn't a great fit. And that in-person school setting is probably really important for them. And also just probably more of a reliance on some of the social media apps. The connections we couldn't have in real life in some circumstances, we were then having through Zoom or through social media contacts. And so things were looking really different. Unfortunately, we're in a different place right now. And so most children are back to in-person school, and we're engaging in more social activities and have those extracurriculars that are happening outside, and in the real world or in real life. But it was a big change for adults. And I can't imagine how it must have felt to have been a child in the context of all of these changes that were going on.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. You're very optimistic, which I love too. You're obviously this on your sleeves movement is going to be good. Is there enough? Are we seeing these starting to move into a lot of different states? Are we going to go national? Is there a national movement? And then on to local level, where are people going to be able to look for their sources? Is it a one-stop shop, or they can check in their community?
Yeah, it's all of the above, to be
Okay.
honest with you. On Our Sleeves is national. We've connected into classrooms across the whole United States and have had lots of kind of contacts nationally and across almost all of the states, I think, at this point in time. And so onoursleeves.org is a great place to start. But certainly you can also start in the school setting, kind of ask teachers, maybe school counselors for support or for resources, and definitely pediatricians. Primary care providers are a great place to start. They can often help direct to evidence-based, kind of expert-created resources and help parents kind of figure out, do I need to seek professional help at this point in time? Or is this maybe something we can kind of work on together, or just in the context of our family, or maybe just thinking about ways to kind of promote mental wellness even. It doesn't necessarily need to be that there's a diagnosis or a significant concern, but how can we keep ourselves mentally healthy?
And before somebody was to, just somebody listening right now, just say, I need a pediatric psychologist and my daughter needs one. How do we know? Or do we just contact your primary care physician or one of the kids just to see at an early age? When should we identify before they can where you can get involved and help out?
Yeah, I think definitely having those conversations with primary care providers is always a good place to start, because this is a conversation that they're really used to having, that they're often kind of the first point of contact for a lot of patients and families. But additionally, we know that caregivers are experts in their child. And so if you're noticing significant changes in mood, that's really going on for longer than just a couple days. Maybe it's going on for a week or 2 weeks at a time. And your child may start to not be doing some of the activities that they used to like to do. Maybe they're isolating themselves more. Maybe they're having more tantrums or having more of a hard time in terms of their behavior. whenever it starts to impact that day-to-day functioning, that's when we maybe want to kind of seek that professional help and ask for a referral or get in contact with a behavioral health clinician or a mental health clinician.
See, I thought for the longest time when my one youngest daughter, it was like a form of bullying that was going on. But what I'm finding out is they can shut people out really quick too. I mean, I'm going to block you. I mean, that's their big thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're blocked. And what's scary is that they can block people who are, so I was like kind of policing it. Dad's creeping. Dad, you're creeping, but we're trying not to creep, but we just want to know what's going on. I want to be your friend on here or what have you. And, you know, there's a point where they can change your identity. They can block you. They can do whatever. Is the bullying as big of a deal now, do you think, because they have that guard, if you will, by just a snap of a finger, somebody's ticking them off? Or do you think it's something that's a little more, we got to be able to make sure we watch what they're doing too? Because some of that stuff too, for their mental health, I'm just thinking too, if they want to hide behind it, I'm okay, they could create a false kind of look page, but then they're over here as this identity is someone else. I worry about that.
It gets tricky. It gets really tricky. And I think what you said, I think is really important, is that I'm going to be your friend on here, and you might not like it. You might think I'm a creeper, and that's okay. I can handle that. I can take that, but that's what we're going to do. And that might be part of your family social media plan, that if you're on social media, I have to be your friend on this social media account. And so I do think that that's important, because cyberbullying is a real risk, and it can have those harmful effects. It can certainly start to impact a child's mood, a child's behavior, can have impacts on self-esteem. And so we know that that is still a risk and something to be paying attention to.
That's good, because I'm glad you said it, because it's really like, listen to your children. Some parents just hand it over to them so early, and I'm like, be involved is what you're saying. It's as simple as just being involved. I mean, I pay the bills, is what I say, just so folks know too. And I say, hey, look, who's paying your phone bill, guys? And these are older teenagers now I'm talking about, and starting at the young age. But guess what, guys? I pay the bills, and you're on my cloud. And if I want to shut you down, I will shut you down real quick. And I've done or limited their time. It doesn't mean I can get every little thing that's going on, but if that means to anybody at home, am I okay doing that? Or do you think I'm over the top? Is it okay that I can limit time, or is that taking away their self? Like, Dad, other people are on there, and then all of a sudden 15 minutes goes by, and then I get the little text, Dad, could you please release that and give me another 15 minutes? Or am I over the top? When do I stop doing
I don't think you're over the top. I think it's a conversation that families need to have and kind of make those decisions for what's going to work best for their family and what they know is going to work best for their child in particular. And so I think that that's the most important thing, just having these conversations. And social media is new. It's new for a lot of us. And so as adults, as parents, as caregivers, we maybe weren't experiencing this when we were a child. We don't know what our parents, like how our parents would have responded to this. It wasn't a thing back then. And so this is new for everybody. So I think learning, like utilizing the resources, looking out for these expert created resources, whether it's through On Our Sleeves or through a different avenue, I think is really the best place to start, so that we can just have these conversations and kind of start these ways to kind of navigate this really early on before it becomes a challenge.
That makes sense. No, that's really good. How did On Our Sleeves, I like the whole thing with it, just On Our Sleeves, like, this means what? What would you say? On Our Sleeves. I wear my heart on my sleeve, but on our sleeves.
Yeah, well, that's where it kind of came from. Honestly, we know that children, the adolescents don't wear their emotions on their sleeve. They don't wear their thoughts or feelings on their sleeves. And so it's important to have those conversations, to be able to destigmatize children's mental health, and to help create ways to promote mental wellness, and to kind of get these resources out for free to everyone across the United States who might need them.
That's perfect. I hope anyone listening knows that just how critical it is. It sounds like I'm being more negative on us, and I'm sorry if I am, because in my business, it makes us money. So in my particular way, we deliver content where it's severe weather. I have pages that are just dedicated, just nothing but weather. So if there's like deadly weather, come tornadoes like we had on the 14th of June last week, we're giving that information, telling people, hey, take cover, do this and that and the other. Mm-hmm. But then there's an aspect of community, fun stuff. Here's Bob out in the community doing great things besides his chief meteorologist stuff over here. But this is important, that people, add those categories and segments and add perspective. But when I know there's some kids that just feel like they need that gratification. They need that sense of somebody telling them, hey, look, look at me. I'm just very, look how I look and this and that. I got to have that. You look beautiful, sweetheart. And I look at these comments my daughter read. Hey, gorgeous. Hey, say, oh, girl, you're the best. You're so, and it gets to the point. When is it damaging for folks? When is it going to be damaging for folks if they continue this?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really hard question to answer, and we might not have the answer in it because I think it could depend for everybody. But I think we know that instant gratification and those likes or those comments can be really reinforcing. And so it makes us maybe want to continue to post those pictures and to get those comments. And so I think it's just important to kind of think about other ways that we can maybe help build our self-esteem and help our children recognize their self-esteem too. And that, okay, I'm really good at this and I'm good at some other things too. And so my body does amazing things because I can run really fast, or I'm really good at lacrosse, or I'm really great at field hockey, and kind of thinking about some of those other ways that our body kind of is amazing and does amazing things that maybe is not kind of that overemphasis on how we're looking or our appearance.
That does make sense. It does make a lot of sense. So I'm really hoping that for folks listening, they check out onyoursleeves.org. Get involved, find out all the free tools that you have that can really help us out. I think that's really remarkable. And what you do is just fantastic. Keep on the mission that you're doing. I appreciate that. A lot of good insight, and I think this is going to help a lot of people out. Dr. Snyder is on our side, and that's our little mantra here for News 3. But on our sleeves, she's a contributor and pediatric psychologist, and she is nationwide known. So check it out. Children's Cannot Speak Today. Yes, they can. If they're doing it the right way and social media being properly utilized. Families, get started today with your kids. I think that's the best advice right there. Sounds good. You can see us, too, on Spotify, iHeart, or Audible. And you can check us out on YouTube. See the wonderful Dr. Snyder to herself and her bright, cheery smile in her office and clinic and making time for us today. We appreciate that. And also, you can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, speaking of social media, Dr. Snyder. These are little elements and segments that we have that'll push for you. You have yourself a terrific, terrific day, and God bless you, and we appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you.